Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Invitation to a Conversation. I'm Pamela Bailey. Hope everyone had a blessed week. I recently ran across an article on Facebook about Sapelo Island and what it's going through in this present day time. So I decided to do a series on everything Sapelo Island from the beginning of it being established as a barren island and the Black history that it has to offer. And I introduce you the man who's going to tell that story, Mr. Reginal Hall. Hi, Mr. Hall. How you doing today?
I'm well. Good morning, Miss Bailey. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for accepting my invitation to a conversation, and thank you for doing this series on Sapelo Island and the Black heritage. I don't know how many series this is going to take, but I would like to be the student and you tell the history from as far back as you can tell where it was established and where it is at present time.
All right. If you go and understand how important Black culture is as a component in the history of Georgia, I mean, we're a rich culture. We're the Gullah Geechee culture who have a language of the Gullah Geechee. So a lot of people call us Gullah Geechee, but we're actually Gullah Geechee people. Our family members were brought here on Saplo Island in the enslavement process as early as the late 1700s, 1792, 93, 94. You'll find a lot of the writings out there claim we didn't get here till 1802, except we got, an understanding from the cultural conversation of when we got here. When we were brought to Saplo, as most enslaved communities, you're forced to live in the woods, you're forced to live in whatever you can find as means of housing. Thomas Spalding was the planter over here at the time. Thomas Spalding had upwards of 200 to 300 slaves, as high as 500 at one point. When we get to the island, we're straight forced labor. And the labor over here, our staple was not cotton. Our staple was rice. And in understanding the rice culture, we then, from the homeland, began what we know as sweetgrass basket making. Well, the sweetgrass basket was made so that when you pick the rice, you can put that rice in that basket, and they call them fanning. So you take that sweetgrass basket and you fan that rice on a windy day and it blow the husk off. We also brought an indigenous material as a building material to Saplo called tabby. Tabby is a form of concrete. We still have tabby standing today from the first part of the 1800s here on Saplo. The problem is with our tabby dwellings, the state of Georgia's government, through stealing our lands where our tabby dwellings are located, have allowed them to dilapidate, begin to diminish, and the destruction of the ancestors' hand-built dwellings are falling apart. Once we understood we're gonna be here in a reference point, as my grandmother would have said, you might as well get comfortable. So we began building homes, we began farming outside of the plantation work. And if we fast forward to the Freedom Days, 1865, well, as soon as Freedom Days hit on Saplo, we started buying the land with American currency. Saplo make up 17,650 acres. Of that 17,650 acres, we know, not just through cultural context or historical understanding as the language of the people, but we know we owned upwards of 5,000 acres of the 17,650. We began building communities. Our churches were going up. Our hospital was going up. We began understanding communal relations on an island in the state of Georgia coming out of enslavement. Bilali Muhammad is our ancestor who was brought to these islands with his 7 daughters, forcing him to leave his 12 sons behind. And the 7 daughters were the creation of many of the 44 family here on this island. We made up somewhat 1,500 to 2,000 people. Today, we've been reduced to 30 people, not 30 family members. 30 families of the 44, 30 family members. That's not 30 homes. We're counting a couple of the children that's left on the island. We're counting the elders. You have 2 and 3 persons of a household. And the problem has become the developers in the state are encroaching upon our human and civil rights, not to abrogate our land ownership rights. Now, we're still talking about the Constitution of their United States. Fast forward to the 1920s, and here comes R.J. Reynolds. After we done bought our lands, we starting to get settled in. We had a number of high power economic fellas come to this island, one of them being Howard Coffin Ford Motor Company. But the worst was R.J. Reynolds. R.J. Reynolds was a terrorizer. But because he was friends with President Coolidge at the time and all of the state senate and county officials, all they had to do was get a phone call from R.J. Reynolds, and public corruption was the main staple of the day for them.
Mr. Hall,
Yeah.
as you tell this story, I'm going to ask some questions. For those who are descendants and know the Sapelo Island history, tell the people who don't know Sapelo, like myself, who R.J. Reynolds is, where he came from.
R.J. Reynolds is the tobacco heir son, Reynolds and Reynolds Tobacco. R.J. Reynolds came over here with nothing but money, shotguns, and horses, and they called him the Carolina Kid. We call him an abuser and the main gentrifier of the early 1900s. He forced our family. Go ahead.
Who established the connection of the way to get off the island back and forth?
I'm not quite sure I understand your question.
Okay, so Sapelo Island started as a barren island. And
it's the 4th largest barrier island in the state of Georgia.
And isn't it the last island, barren island in the state of Georgia? Is it the last barren island in the state of Georgia?
Well, no, we got a number of barrier islands, but we're the last inhabited near barrier island.
Now, prior to R.J. Reynolds getting on the island, how was Howard E. Coffin effective? Didn't he start? How was he effective on that island before it got turned over to R.J. Reynolds?
Well, I've got to make sure I understand the question. How was Howard Coffin affected?
What was his cause? What was his plight? What was his implementation onto Sapelo Island? When he came along, how did he develop it?
No, okay, let's go back. Nobody developed this island except for my family members. We dug the ditches, we cleared all of the fields, At one point from the plantation house, you could see all the way to the beach, where now it's just grown forest. So when you think of the roads, the ditches, the understandings of the building style, none of them folk have nothing to do with it. They was just here, and we did, as developers, our own work.
Mm-hmm.
So they were only here to abuse us.
How did the ferry come about?
How what?
How did the ferry come about for y'all to go back and forth across?
RJ Reynolds started, what he called a ferry. And when RJ Reynolds started that ferry, he also applied for the United States postal contract. Well, through my grandfather obtaining the contract from the United States postal system, RJ Reynolds was pretty upset about that. So he told my grandfather he couldn't ride the boat no more. So my grandfather went and bought his own boat. My grandfather opened the first store on this island and was pretty much a patriarch of the community. At that point, when my grandfather bought his vessel to now carry the mail back and forth, he then also carried some of our family members, taking them off RJ Reynolds' boat. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And who were the first people on Sapelo Island? So where does the name Sapelo derive from?
There's a number of spellings. They used to call it Sapelo. That was during the, let's just say, the Native American time. And the Native American was the Gual Indian on Saplo, where they built the largest Native American shell ring in Northeast America that still stands in somewhat of a condition today. It wasn't until the state allowed archaeologists to dig a hole through the mound had that form of disruption. Mm-hmm.
And how did the Black people get there? They were enslaved. They came across on ship. And what part of Africa did they come from?
Yeah, we came on the same slave ships. We come out of Timbo, Guinea area near Sierra Leone as the Kizi, K-I-Z-Z-I, tribe of the Mandinka. Mm-hmm.
And that's West Africa?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Now, as our ancestor was taken from West Africa, he was then taken into the Bahamas on Dr. Bell's plantation. This guy named Dr. Bell did what they call seasoning slaves. So they actually took ancestor Bilal Muhammad through the Bahamas on Dr. Bell's plantation to season him as a slave.
Season him as a slave. So to make him become a slave.
Well, you have to understand, this brother was one of the educated scholars being taken who understood his religion under the Islamic understandings and came over here and built what is known as the first temple of the Islamic understandings in the United States of America on Saplo Island.
Okay.
He also wrote a 13-page document called the Risalah. The Risalah is now known as the mother text of the Islamic literature on this island, which University of Georgia stole off this island in some form or fashion of collaboration as an egregious act to steal our document, which they have since taken around the world and made plenty of money off of it. We want our document back.
Can you name some of the generations of Black families that came from Sapelo Island?
And when you say name them, you mean last name as family?
Yes.
Yeah, we got Dixons, Bailey, Hoggs, H-O-G-G, which have turned into Hall. We got the Grosvenors, we got the Parkers. Out of 44, we got 44 last name family members. You got the Walkers, you got the Lemon family. And you got to remember, our names were given to us, or we were taken by our job description, and some took on the planter's name.
You took off some people took the job's description, what their job was, and some took on the plantation owner's name. So those names were the ones that formed the population that was on Sapelo Island.
That's correct.
And so what was the main part of Sapelo Island that belonged to the Black people? Was it not Raccoon Bluff?
We were once 13 solid communities spread from the north of the end of the island, the south end of the island, and east and west. Those 13 communities, through this land interruption and the greed of Buckra, has now taken us down to one community. To answer your question about Raccoon Bluff, that was our largest settlement to date, as upwards of 1,000 acres. When R.J. Reynolds decided he wanted to take our lands to have a hunting camp, he then went through a federal process on the north end known as the Pittman-Robinson Act. Now, remember, I told you this man was so well connected, he bringing presidents to the island. That Pittman-Robinson Act is where all of the tax dollars go after you buy a fishing rod, some fishing lines, some fishing reels, some bullets. That Pittman-Robinson Act did not cover the bluff. It covered most of the north end of the island. So as of recent, my cousin J.R. Grosvenor and myself had surveyors up into the north end where we have seen R.J. Reynolds' original survey pins. But those survey pins were only to talk about the lands adjacent to Raccoon Bluff, not including Raccoon Bluff. But Raccoon Bluff, after Reynolds died, was then going through a process of being stolen by the state of Georgia on a claim of land ownership that you would have to go through a certain amount of years of continued use, which they have attempted to keep us out of the bluff. They stole our cemetery in the bluff. They mowed down all of our housing, our dwellings that was in the bluff, and completed that by the late 1950s. And then as Reynolds, I said the state, but that was more Reynolds doing. Reynolds died in 1964, and here comes the state attempting to steal all 1,000 acres.
And how was the state able to get their hands on their property? Wasn't what was significant about Howard Coffin's wife? Wasn't she the one that sold the property, Cephelo Island, to the state of Georgia? Reynolds'
wife, Anne Marie Reynolds. When she died, everything went to her, and she so-called sold the Brooklyn Bridge to the state of Georgia, where she says, here, I'm gonna sell you this land for $3 million. And it was virtually the same exact thing as Pamela Bailey selling Reginal Hall the Brooklyn Bridge. So all of a sudden, we know you had no ownership rights, but you sold our land, where Reynolds forced us off of that land, which was north end property, highest ground on the island, some of the best waterfront property, and grows some of our best crops. But Reynolds then pushed us all out of those 12 other communities into what we call today Hog Hummock, H-O-G-G, my father's last name, lent to the community. And it's called a hummock, a raised piece of forested land surrounded by marsh. We ain't no hog, H-O-G, hammock. We ain't no animal swinging in your backyard. We're a hog hummock.
What was the main economics on Sapelo Island to sustain life? How did y'all What were your thing? Fishing, hunting? What was the main trade
You
over
said,
there?
you said it, fishing, hunting, and farming.
Mm-hmm.
Our main economic source was farming. So
Mm-hmm.
we can go back into the census of the records to show that our family members were farmers, were making this amount of money, and each one of them had whatever staple of farming they were selling as, let's just call it for today's purposes, import export of goods.
Mm-hmm. What was
Yeah.
your main economic staple that y'all grew over there besides rice?
Well, we grow sugarcane, we grow red peas, but it's nothing on this island in this high nitrate soil that doesn't grow beautifully. I mean, one of my cousins a few years ago was pulling out 7-8 pound heads of cauliflower. It ain't nothing over here that's not growing if you put it in the ground, especially our fruit trees with our high nitrate of this black soil.
What happened? How did the nitrate get imported over there? How did that?
No, it's not it's just the content of the soil and how rich it is. It has a high nitrate in it.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, on an island surrounded by water,
Mm-hmm.
and that's by salt water.
Mm-hmm.
So humidity and the dew alone is something beautiful for crop.
How do y'all still grow over there, or all your food imported?
You can't grow without the lands. When the land was stolen, the farming was virtually null and void.
Mm. Mm. Tell me about the lifestyle of growing up on Sapelo, schooling. Um, how did
My father started going to school and he could only go to the 6th grade over here. Then he had to go live across the water with our cousin Phoebe. And he went through high school from the 6th grade, graduating high school, not being able to share those times, days, and moments with his mother and father and his brother because he had to go across the water.
When you say across the water, do you mean McIntosh County, Darien?
McIntosh County or Brunswick, which is Glenn County.
Mm-hmm.
My father graduated Risley High School, Brunswick.
Okay. And how often does the ferry ride? How did the ferry start, and how often does that ride? Did y'all always have, how many ferries did y'all start out with on that island? And how many do you have now?
Well, we started off with the one with Reynolds, and then it kind of went over to the state, and we had the Janet, and then we have now Anna Marie, which is the older boat, and our faster ferry is called Katie Hall Underwood, but they left the Hall off because they wasn't going to put that on there.
Mm-hmm.
Memory reputation. If you don't keep calling her Katie Hall Underwood, like I say on her headstone, you're going to forget the middle part is Hall. But to answer the question about the slave ship, it is relegating us to no or little economics because of the way that it runs. It leaves Saplo every morning, per near except weekends, at 7 a.m. So you own it or you're not. But then it don't come back again till 3:30 p.m. So you can leave off Saplo 7 a.m., 4:30 p.m. And those are your off days, off island moments. You can come back on the first ferry at 8:30, but then you can't come back across the water to the island again till 3:30. So there's a barrier of time that holds us up from allowing tourists to truly have an opportunity to come over here and enjoy this island. But the other problem is on the ferry, we just talked about, let's say, personal economics. The other problem then is you can't really get no job on the mainland because you can't never get back home if that job is 9 to 5. Well, that ferry leave at 5:30. Everybody knows if you go to Brunswick, it take you a good hour and 30 minutes to get, Savannah, it take hour and 30 minutes. If you're at Brunswick during that high time traffic, it's going to take you 45 minutes to an hour.
Mhm.
So you can't get no job on the mainland and live at home on the island. And if you do, you're lucky because you found somebody amenable to the time schedule of the fair.
And when you had to go to school, they couldn't go back and forth. They had to stay over here and go back home on the weekend in order to make it to school on time. So there was up to other family members and friends to help the students, the children with their schoolwork.
We have a school bus that picks our few children up right now on the mainland. But we're paying taxes like they do everywhere else under that ad valorem tax of education tax. And we don't have a school bus or a school driver over here on the island to take the children to the boat. Moreover, our children can't play sports, can't go and stay for after school programs because they got to be back on that boat before that last boat leave, unless their parents can afford a house on the other side of the water. Now, the problem then becomes all of the after school programs, sports activities, whatever activity programs our children are not a part of.
And you once said there was a schoolhouse on Sapelo. So the demise and the economic doing, how did it slowly become obsolete?
It didn't slowly, they just stopped the educational possibilities of the school on Saplo. And it wasn't a school, it was just a trailer that my father and most of the elders went to. And then all of a sudden, they took our medical facility away. They took our food program to feed the elders away. I mean, if you look at the blueprint of what the state of Georgia is doing to create genocide on Sapelo, it's the same blueprint from Hilton Head, which used to be known as Trent Island. It's the same blueprint for St. Simon. It's the same blueprint for Jekyll. All you got to do is make the quality of life as the lowest form possible. And of course, that's going to run a number of people off.
And how has the lifestyle changed over the years from when you were growing up to how it is now?
When I was a kid coming here with my grandmother, it was free and feeling good. Now we call it a black cloud over us because we're watching all of these Caucasian developers come over here. We're watching them bring their rich, they got the new cars, the water vessels, the ATVs. Our children are looking at, this, I guess you would call it black cloud of economics come, and we don't have any parts of it. But then they come and build these houses outside of the codes of the county, violating their own policy inside of what we know is public corruption, and then allowing the developers to get their certificate of occupancy for these illegal developments. So that in itself causes frustration, anger, vengeance. When we know that you as a so-called new neighbor have an opportunity in economics to build a dwelling that raises our land value, well, we already know what's next. You tax them out. Well, they attempted to do that, but we won our tax case through a settlement with McIntosh County in 2012. But that tax settlement only lasts for 3 years through the state laws. But the reason that we've gone 8, almost 9 years under this new tax settlement is because we're heading to federal court against the county.
So how does the state of Georgia, monopolizes or runs Sapelo Island now, is underneath their jurisdiction?
We have what's known as the Saplo Island Heritage Authority that is governed and chaired by the governor of each sitting chair as the governors are rotated in and out through elections. But they've been sitting on this board since 1983. the board was a legislative act as the Sapelo Island Heritage Authority. And that legislative act said, we're creating this authority to preserve the Gola Kizi people and their lands on Sapalo. It was all the guys to steal the lands and become a land bank to now start trading with the white developers.
Mm, 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 mm. So it says one thing, but does another.
That is absolutely correct, which is called violation of policy.
You just went out. Okay. Are there any nonprofit organizations or anything helping the residents? You said there's 35 residents, from children. How old is the youngest person on Sapelo Island right now?
Going on 3 years old.
Okay. And the oldest?
As an elder?
Yes.
High 80s.
How old?
In the high 80s, 88,
Oh,
89.
okay. Okay. And so are there any nonprofit organizations out there or private owners that are helping Sapelo to the Black people on Sapelo to regain their land and to stay on Sapelo? Because if not, where are it went from how many families down to 35 individuals? So what is
down
on? Go ahead.
30. When I was a kid, there was upwards of 500 people over here. I'm in my 50s. So we down to 30 bodies, 30 individual persons, correct?
Mm-hmm. So what kind of economic development can be built on Sapelo in order to generate revenue for you all to stay over there or to rebuild it?
Well, let's be clear. There's only one true avenue of the $34.9 billion tourism industry. But we have to become self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
You know, right now, because of the lack of economics, only a couple of family members have boats that they come back cross-force on the water from the mainland every now and then. And a couple family members might have a boat on the island, but it's expensive to run them boat. So to get more precise with an answer to your question, no, there's no nonprofit on the island coming from anywhere else that is truly assisting us in any part of the process. Our nonprofit that was created in 1983, I always make sure is understood, has the tendency over the years to become part of an arm of the government. And the nonprofit itself had a event 2 weeks ago. Now, this is supposed to be our community nonprofit, had an event 2 weeks ago that had only white people there. So when you look at a gentrification process, there's always going to be a couple of us to stand out to make sure we do what needs to be done for the other people and not our people. It's a history. I mean, that's in time. We know that happens.
And so has Sapelo ever had a governing body like Brunswick or Darien has a city commissioner or a county commissioner, or you don't have any government body like we have the mayor or anything over Sapelo to help y'all to move along with revenue or to rebuild?
We as a people have to make up 250 residents by state law to even start the municipality conversation. But we're right now being governed by a board of white men that have nothing to do with us, couldn't come over here and survive for 36 hours. And we're fighting now to get these lands back that would allow us to then build some homes for our family members to come home and start small businesses. We don't need no jobs. We can run businesses over here for the next 5,000 years if it's set up properly in an incubation unit that has the accountants, the lawyers, and the understandings of how to truly stop false financial practices. If you give most folk of our people $1 million, we haven't been trained what to do with $1 million. So we have to have the educational component that comes with the funding. We have to have the understanding of how do we develop in a design process that is eco-friendly to the earth. We have to get these kind of courses that say, well, here goes a mediation course outside of an institution as a higher learning institution that says we can come in and start to heal with, if nothing else, stop the divide and conquer. How do we heal ourselves from so many years of being divided against each other by an entity called the state that has thrown so much muck on top of us that we have to separate just to get clear of the muck?
Mm, mm. And
But with
so,
an organization known as the Sapelo Island Heritage Authority that is chaired by the governor, and the other two members on it are the state properties commissioner and the commissioner of DNR, we could never win. They're doing exactly what they want to do to make sure that this diamond in the rough becomes their resort development as the last, let's just say, barrier island, but as one of the last islands where Black people have real ownership. Again, you can go from Wilmington, North Carolina, down to St. Augustine, Florida. You're not going to find an intact community practicing the African ways and living on an island as a desolate island. You got to remember, we only got dirt roads. We ain't got no stores. We ain't got no stop signs. We ain't got no stoplights. We on dirt roads. So we're actually a white canvas of an island that we should become the artist in filling in that canvas for the most beautiful picture of survival you can imagine.
Tell me some of the main structure that could be made to generate income for a tourist destination, because you know that's the future of it, you know, if it gets out of the hands of the Black people. So what will be the main staple for the tourist destination for anybody to go over to Sapelo Island?
As it stands right now, the beach. They say if you want to come do nothing, come to Saplo. You want to come understand how solitude works, come to Saplo. They have decimated us to the point where we barely have any social interaction and or activities. We barely have any gathering of group or people. Now, since COVID started, we haven't had a church service over here, but Sunday, tomorrow, comes the first church service back alive. But you got to understand, this is a proposed plan, a thought about proposed idea of how to decimate under the auspices of genocide our people off this island.
How many churches? How many churches is over? How many churches are on Sapelo?
Well, see, there goes the divide and conquer. We got 2 different churches, but we have 3 church buildings. Our original church building out of Raccoon Bluff that stands today emptied and unoccupied because they kicked us off the lands. We have St. Luke Baptist Church, and we have the sister church to the church in Raccoon Bluff, First African.
And which church is still operating prior to COVID?
No, First African is having its first service tomorrow.
Okay. And how many stores are over there? Do you have a supermarket, general store?
None. Zero.
So you all have to come across the water to do your everyday shopping and be back before that last ferry.
That's correct. And the logistics of that has a tendency to increase our price. So if you're on the mainland and you pay $18, $20 for a lunch, well, the logistics of our cost just to go get food and the water and the preparations for meals will raise 10 to 12% automatically. But you ain't never had no shrimp melt in your mouth with your grits like you have over here.
I love shrimps and grits. How many people fit on? So is there a maximum load capacity or size capacity of how much product y'all can bring back?
Well, let's just say this,
Mhm.
because I heard a question coming. So how many people can go on the ferry at a time? On the large ferry is 149, on the small ferry is 117. But the problem with that, if you have the university doing tours, the Department of Natural Resources signer program doing tours, and then our family member doing tours, they attempt to put the other two on the boat first and tell my family member he has to wait and see how many people are left. Well, we've cut that out.
Okay.
Our
So
federal lawsuits have taken us places that we could never imagine being.
so you're saying, right, because the University of Georgia has ownership or has research over there. How does the University of Georgia play over there into Sapelo?
They don't. They only come over here under the auspices of the same gentrification of the state. Never had one open house for our family members. Our children, since 1959, they've been on this island and never had one educational open house for our people. Moreover, the jobs that they've offered, as you can imagine, to the Black folks is to cut the grass.
Sure. And so you're saying when the University of Georgia or DNR has a tour, that they occupy the space that the people that live on the island would need to use on the, you went out again. Do you need to charge your phone while we're on?
No, we on the island, so the internet is funny acting.
Okay, so you're saying, okay, so say your family had to go shopping and the University of Georgia or the DNR comes over and they want to do a tour. So they used to overseas you all, and you would have to wait and allow the tour to take place first?
No. My cousin runs a tourism business over here. They attempt to push him out of the way and make sure they're covered as the university or the signer program or DNR, whatever they're running through the white organizations. They've attempted over the years to push him to the back of the line from putting his 30 or 40 people on.
Oh, okay. But what I'm saying is, okay, so, all right. So is there a different?
As far as personal, we going over across that water, ain't nobody stopping us. It's a tax-funded ferry through the state of Georgia.
Okay.
And have a precedent as family members.
Okay.
Well, we've set a precedent as family members to not be pushed aside.
So the people on Saplo have their own ferry. Does DNR and the University of Georgia have their own ferry, or do y'all use the same ferry? That's my original question.
The people of Sapelo do not have their own ferry as the descendants of the enslaved. Everybody gets on the state Department of Natural Resources operated ferry.
How much is the ferry?
If you're a tourist, you coming over for the day, is $5 round trip. If you're a family member coming over for the day, is $2 each way, $4 round trip. If you're a resident of the island, you can pay a $25 a year ferry pass.
How much has that changed over the years? Has it always been that much, or has it gone up or down? Has it changed over the years?
I mean, in terms of an exorbitant amount of money, $25 is not a lot. It has gone up over the years, but why do we have to be double dipped on with the state operated ferry, which we pay the taxes for, but yet you want to charge us this menial amount of money just as an overseer?
Why can't y'all just have a decal? Why can't y'all just have a decal like you do to go on St. Simon's Island? I mean, not St. on Jekyll Island. If you're residents, if you pay the taxes, why do you have, like you say, double dip and do both? Why can't you just do one or the other?
Well, let's ask this question. Why can't we have our own community operated ferry and
That's
our
right.
own community operated barge, where we now don't have to call the state or look for the state to do nothing for us. We want to become back to self-sufficient. We don't need them.
Right.
But the problem becomes we don't have the funding to do that. The problem then becomes we haven't created enough public opinion for the brothers and sisters to get mad enough to come stand down on these docks 3,000-4,000 strong and say it's over. You're not going to keep doing our people like this.
Mm-hmm. How many generations, once they leave Sapelo, how many come back to visit, or do they come back to visit?
Oh, you know, I'm going to tell this story like I've told it plenty of times. The people that left Saplo was forced off Saplo. So we try to change our language. Yes, once we was forced off Saplo due to low quality of life, due to non-economics, because you didn't want to hire us with the state, the university didn't hire us to do nothing. All of a sudden, those people who grew up as my father's generation, the generation before, the way they was treated, hell, would you want to come back to Saplo Island? But the problem then becomes they don't go out on the mainland, with exclusion of a number, a few of the people who left here, but they don't go back with the story. They want to forget about this mess.
Right.
So now the children don't know, the grandchildren don't know, but we're changing that now.
Right. And so do y'all have do you have an outpatient clinic over there? Do you have any kind of medical?
Nothing.
So anybody who gets sick in the wee hours of the night or night after the ferry is no.
We got to call the state, Massa, have Massa fire up the boat, and we got to use that 90-minute window. Everybody knows if it's an emergency, you have a 90-minute window of life expectancy. So we got to get them to the boat, no ambulance, just some rickety old trucks or whatever vehicle you put them in, get them on the boat, get them across the water, no matter, now, that water is pretty tumultuous during some season. Right. Get them across the water and then have ability to get them off that boat into a waiting ambulance, which still has to go back to the hospital. You've lost your 90-minute window of time.
Oh my gosh. That is the protocol for somebody who needs
protocol.
Medical assistant?
That's correct.
Oh my gosh. So you got from 7 a.m. into the morning until 3 a.m. where you don't have to do that 90 window call for emergency assistance because you can just go on the ferry. But anytime after that, you have to call the state?
No. You said that wrong, no. It only runs 4 times a day, right?
Okay.
So the boat will be on this side at the end of the day. So if it's 2 a.m. in the morning and something happened, that's the process you have to do just to get the boat, right?
And you have to, you have to cut out the state because the state is the holdup right there.
Well, not the holdup. The state is in our way because we've never truly been able to assess ourselves in a reference point of how do we do it by ourselves.
Right. How was the effect of COVID on Sapalo?
We had very few cases, and the case that we got is because one of them visitors came over here and brought it. But very few negative impact effects of COVID. We're clean over here. The air is clean, no pollution.
And
until all of our new neighbors got here with all of these new vehicles.
So you said, so let me go back to this. So we were discussing lifestyle, and you mentioned social. What type of social things do y'all do over there? What type of social engagement?
Nothing. So they've allowed as McIntosh County for the Senior Citizen Center just to collapse, toilets falling through the floors, air conditioners broke, roof no good. So they're supposed to be sending an RFP out, which I've been requesting for the last 3 months, and fixing up that center. Well, that's where we held most of our, let's just say, weddings or holiday events where everybody gather at that spot. Well, once they let it collapse, we can't gather there no more. Mm-hmm. But the problem is we have the elders, they're not going to leave home too much after dark. We got the young folk, they running around here making sure that they're surviving and feeding these couple of children that's on the island, so they don't have a whole bunch of time. But we still get our I have our one cousin, she still makes sure she's out there doing her thing, fishing, collecting oysters, buckets full at a time, cooks for a lot of the family members that bring guests over. But these are, I'm gonna say, the menial part of what she could be doing in her own business ownership.
Yeah, true.
In order to build her restaurant, she would have to have the land to do it on.
Right. What kind of sports? And so you mentioned sports. There's no type of sports engagement on Sapelo for the children or
No,
adults? None at all?
no, no.
And so you said, and also I want to say, you said there's 35 individuals. There are 35 Black individuals on
30.
Sapelo, 30 on Sapelo Island right now. Who are your neighbors? You talk about neighbors. Who are your neighbors among you all?
I keep talking about new neighbors.
New neighbors. Who are your new neighbors?
White developers raising our taxes, looking at us funny and asking as of last week, what are we doing on this road?
What are you doing on this road?
So our roads are state or county public easements. And because I go around here and take videos of all of their illegally built houses, take videos of all of their illegally built docks that they're trying to add on to the island as private citizens. One of them had the audacity last week to come out and ask me, what am I doing back here on this road?
So is Sapelo Island an open island where you can walk from one end to another end?
It is.
And so you're saying with the new developers, they're not the neighbors that are the developers living over there while they're developing?
Not just living over here, making it their vacation homes, but then they rent them out on these Airbnb and other websites, and they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year off of their houses.
And the small community of Black people are seeing this happening. And so what are y'all doing about it to get it changed or become part of it?
I'm filing policy complaints that they're violating their policies. I'm making sure that the county has a clear, accurate record of how many times they've allowed certificate of occupancies in the violation of their policies. We know that there's public-private corruption going on where the public agency, as McIntosh County commissioners, tax assessors, tax commission, are allowing these guys to do this, full well knowing what it's going to do to decimate the population of Black people. Moreover, the commission themselves, as the Building, Zoning, and Ordinance Code, wrote the Building, Zoning, and Ordinance Code that says you can't build over 1,400 square feet. Mm-hmm. And then I started this, that was called Section 515. Then when I started this, they changed that to Section 16.1 that says now you can build 1,400 heated square feet. Mm. But now we have the developers at 2,872 square feet, heated space, 2,442, 2,087, 1,583. So who in the county gave you the certificate of occupancy knowing that your house violated the county's code?
And so has the sitting governor been over there? And do you, I'm gonna ask this question though, do you think he is aware? And has he been over to Sapelo to assess any of these things? And have you written him to have a conversation with him?
Number one, I didn't have to write him. He the one that signed off on the settlement of $16 million of infrastructure and $750,000 cash for 48 of our family members. So I don't have to write him shit. He knows everything. Mm-hmm. But moreover, we understand through our, we know and see what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So a number of the developers over here are his buddies that he's brought down. They brought him down to the island.
And so when they had, so let me ask you this. Are there any hotels over there that's being occupied by tourists?
We don't have no hotels.
They're just Airbnbs?
Just the white fellas and a couple of it's two black folk that's in the category with the white fellas. We know, we call them sambos. And the black man that built with the rest of the Caucasian gentrifiers, he has the largest house on Saplo as he tried to pull the rug over our eyes like we didn't know who he was.
Wow. And so when they generate this money, do you as original residents get any of that revenue? Where does that revenue go to?
Hell no, you don't get none of their money. It go in their bank account.
Wow. Does Sapelo have a bank?
No.
So y'all have to come over here to do your banking, everything that has to do with everyday living, you have to come to the mainland. So how are these,
If you ain't got it and you ain't in the boat, the last boat done ran, you ain't gonna have it.
So these developers, how many are they on Sapelo?
117 LLCs in our 400-acre community.
No.
117
117 LLCs?
On record.
And all of them are doing different types of development. What kind of different types of development are they doing?
All of them are building illegally sized houses inside of their development process.
And talk to me about when does tourist season kick off and y'all have the most tourists over there?
Peak season starting up right about now, come spring, all the way through about August, September, and then October to about February we got off peak.
Wow. And so who does the touring for the people that come over there?
It's mostly university and state.
The University of Georgia and the state.
That's correct. Again, my cousin runs a tourism operation that his mother, and his father are diligent at attempting to keep going. But because of these interferences and impediments placed in our way by the people who are trying to get rid of us, it's hard. It's hard going. So let's just use today, for instance. Let's say that boat was full to the tune of 117 people. Well, my cousin out of that 117 people might get 20 of those people that he is already booked to be on that ferry. But how come, if the state has a website talking about cultural preservation, historical preservation, why would they not say, we're going to make sure the tours are booked and give them to you?
Yes.
And not giving us shit. You're not giving us nothing, but make sure that we understand that you're steering the tourism community back our way instead of steering it away from us.
Right. And so have y'all tried to talk to any of the universities or the DNRs? What was y'all attempt to conversate with them in order for this merge to happen, or they're not willing to merge?
My family members been talking to them way before I started this 13 years ago, and through sheer ability to ignore one until I started my paperwork that says you are foul, indecent, and with no morality. Again, none of that makes no difference to them because they have a mission, which is genocide. And if you put an impediment in front of genocide, you're going to die faster. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, if you take what I just told you and put it in a reference point of survival, where we have to stand up and join arms. But don't forget the post-traumatic stress disorder of what's been caused for 2 centuries since we've been here has never lightened up or quit. We still under post-traumatic stress disorder, which causes what, Miss Bailey? Anger, vengeance, and upset.
Yes, yes, yes.
Who do you take as if you use what somebody made up a long time ago, who do you hurt first? Those closest to you.
To you. That's
if
right.
you're in post-traumatic stress disorder, you don't have nowhere else to reach. We usually take it out on each other. But I've come back home to bring love and harmony as cooperation with our family members who have the integrity of our people.
Have you seen a blueprint of the future development that those 117 LLCs have an idea of what they want to do with Sapelo Island?
Oh, yes, I've seen the blueprint. All you got to do is leave from where you're located right now and go down to St. Simon's Island. There's the blueprint. You can leave there where you're sitting right now and go to Jekyll Island. There go the blueprint.
And I think I asked you this already. We have like 15 minutes to go. And I'm gonna have you come on again because there's other things that we can discuss. And we are going back and forth from the beginning to the present to the future. What do you see for the future of Sapelo Island? What is your idea for the future?
Ancestors ain't gonna let it happen before the last Black is run off this island. The ancestors gonna flood the island. Let's start there. Moreover, we know that our future development has what is known as a SOS, Solutions on Saplo. I've already created the documents, the soda solutions. I know how to bring the family members back home. We're now in the process of this land conversation of return. And believe me, the white man ain't gonna just say, here go the land. We got to keep, but our problem is we got to start fighting as a unit. We ain't gonna never get 100%. If you got 50 people and you get 40 of those people or 25 of those people, you ain't gonna never get the 50%, the 100% of the 50. Well, we have a problem where we're directly divided in half as to those that may want to work with the state. That was just said on an interview, they'd rather work with the state than send them lawsuits. Never would happen where we stand today without the lawsuits. But let's take this into account. You asked me a question, what's the future look like? It looks like building our Golakizi Museum, our Bilali Muhammad Land Recovery Institute, our campgrounds, we don't even have a mechanic shop on the island. So if your car breaks down and one of my cousins can't handle that fix, you got to put it all the way on the barge, get it across the water, get it to the mechanic by a tow truck or however you can get it over there, get it back from the mechanic, wait for the barge to run if they let you on. I just got my trailer back after 6 weeks with my equipment in it because the barge man acted funny towards me because I made him take down the Blue Lives Matter and the Trump 2020 flags on a state contracted private barge. This is what we're going through. Then the state will run the barge on state money. And if the barge has room on it, the barge operator charges us a double dip.
Y'all don't have a mechanic shop for your cars.
We don't have nothing that infrastructurally could help us develop at least the component of fixing our cars.
Before we go, what is it like hurricane season? What is it like during hurricane season?
Got pretty bad these last few years, and I'm sure they call it because it's global warming and the insurgence of the higher tide and the water rise. It's gotten kind of bad lately. And remember, part of that is destroying our crops that we may have as sugarcane or whatever else you got growing, because once that salt water starts encroaching upon these lands, it eats it up. Kills your grass, kills your crops.
And so, so do y'all get any type of hurricane relief money to you're laughing before I finish the statement. Do you get any type of hurricane relief money for your agriculture that when it was destroyed during hurricane season?
Well, we don't have no agriculture like that because we don't have the lands again, Ms. Bailey. But let me talk about the hurricane relief in the most menial sense of just getting the food supply that they were shipping out from the feds as a Army rations box. And then let's start to talk about what we know has been sent over as blue tarps to at least cover our roofs. But then you got one person that goes and collects all of this and puts it in their, let's just say, control, and then tries to sell it to us as a Black person.
Don't tell me that.
I'm telling you.
Get the needs that y'all need, and then wants to sell it to you?
That is correct. But I had to call over to the county with the threats of the federal government on the line with me, as they said, well, this is what we know we sent. And then the county kept all of our blue tarps until I called them and said, we know what you just did. Get our stuff over to us. Well, all of a sudden, the county sends over 96 tarps that had been held for almost 7 weeks before I made the phone call, because my family members have to inform me of this type of stuff as I'm inside of a whole bunch of litigation to try to figure out how to create more. But then I stopped because AmeriGas wouldn't come over on the barge, but to fill up the gas tank at the DNR and the university, and then wouldn't come because the time limit is up to come fill up family members' gas tank that needs to heat or to cook on their stove through gas.
How many Black family homes are over there? It's 35 people. How many Black family homes are over there? 30?
I know you're raising us up to 35 every time you say it, but I'm telling you, I counted 30 on my own hand with my own eyes. But let me ask you a question. The homes that are over here, let's just say it makes up 20, maybe 25, but the homes that have been dilapidated but still ready for rehabilitation of our family members to start making residual income add up to 14. Now, they've already stolen 2 of our cemeteries as the state, which is Raccoon Bluff Cemetery, and our behavior on the south end, our cemetery on the south end known as the Okra Patch, or New Orleans is what we call it.
On our next chapter of this series, what can I expect to hear from you in the last few minutes of this conversation? What can
you expect to hear?
On the upcoming series of Sapelo Island?
Anger, vengeance, and upset. We can start pointing out the reference point of what we have coming up in October 2022 that says the Sapelo Island Heritage Authority, under a federal agreement, now has to sit down with us and explain their 85.6 acres, as I'm attempting to create a design plan for those 85.6 acres here in the Hummock. This is just in Hog Hummock. And that agreement said that they have to sit down with us by October 2022. They put that date on there because they knew the election was in November, and Kemp, more than likely with the ancestors and the Most High God, is going to kick him out of that office and put our sister in there.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Hall. And I look forward to the next upcoming chapter on Sapelo Island and the Black heritage. I tell you, it's I've been reading it, and it's very interesting. And I hope that one day that y'all see the future and you all do not have to leave that rich island.
The elders say, hope in one hand and defecate in the other, and see which one fill up fastest. But stand up for your rights and see how far that gets you to back them down. And keep standing up. And I appreciate you having us, Miss Bailey.
Thank you. And you have a blessed weekend. You take care.
Peace.